Hello and welcome to a love-filled, war-torn episode of Movies You Missed podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm Vee.
And I'm John.
And we are two industry veterans who love to recommend movies to you without spoiling them.
That's true, no spoilers here, and it will continue on as well.
In perpetuity, and so will our friendship since we've been friends since we were about 12 years old.
That's true.
And John, this episode is one of the special ones that we always love, which is neither one of us saw the other's pick before this week.
I know. I'm very interested to hear what you thought of mine this week.
John made me promise months and months and months ago to not tell him what I thought of his movie before we jumped on the recording.
Kind of regret it.
I think I've gotten the feeling that you did.
Yes, but it's good because it'll leave the reaction of mine in authenticity instead of for the podcast, if you will.
Exactly. And the good thing is he won't have to wait too long because he is in fact going first this week.
Yes.
But before we jump into your movie, we always like to discuss the new movies we saw in theater or on streaming.
Oh, yes. One of my favorite segments of Movies You Missed podcast.
Mine too.
So what'd you see?
This week I read the book The Idea of You ahead of the movie being released with Anne Hathaway and Nicholas Galitzine in it.
Oh, wow.
The book was awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. And then the movie just desecrated a story I love.
Horrible.
It's the worst case scenario for any book lover.
Oh, geez, really? That's really upsetting to hear.
Yeah, piss poor adaptation of a book you love is always such a bummer, and it was just bad. The movie was completely surface level in terms of the story, the character development. It didn't get into any character motivations. You didn't understand why these people were doing what they were doing. There was no character growth. There was no explanation as to why different things happened in the movie in terms of what they were doing and what actions they were taking. And it just pissed me off. It was so
Damn. That's really upsetting to hear. I hate when that happens with a book and a movie. Is this a Netflix-produced movie?
It's not, actually. It's a Prime-produced movie.
Oh,
so it's an MGM
that
Amazon Studios film.
Oh, all right. That's even worse to hear because they're usually pretty reliable.
Yeah, exactly. And so very disappointed. Please go and just read the book if you're at all interested in this May-December story.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun with the book. I've already recommended it to your wife.
Oh, okay.
And I've told all my girlfriends to stay away from the movie.
Oh, wow. And I know the movie stars Anne Hathaway.
It does. It does. She was pretty good in the role, but the script was just awful. Whoever adapted the screenplay from the book just should never do any sort of adaptation again.
Okay. Was this similar to like a Lifetime adaptation?
It was.
Okay.
It felt, again, just so superficial in terms of the storyline. And what I mean by that is it's just completely surface level. There's no depth of anything. The story, the characters. Oh, God. Yeah, it just pissed me off. So mad.
Wow, you haven't been this worked up in a movie in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about reading the book and then seeing the movie.
No movie has disappointed me this much and this long because I hadn't had any emotional ties to it ahead of time because of the book, right?
Sure.
And so that's why it was more disappointing than usual, because otherwise I would have just said, oh, it's a throwaway rom-com, whatever, it's not good. But because I really enjoyed the book, that's what elevated the feelings for me, unfortunately.
Okay, well, maybe I will read the book and just stay away from the adaptation.
I definitely recommend that, or watching Nicholas Galitzine's other rom-com, Red, White, and Royal Blue, which was produced last year through Amazon Prime.
Oh, all right. Sounds good.
For those of you who have seen Red, White, and Royal Blue before, he plays the prince.
Oh, okay. You did at one point mention Red, White, and Royal Blue, so I don't know which direction I'm going to go.
Yes, because I listed it in our recap episode.
That's right, you did.
Yeah. So that's the movie I watched this week. Feel free to skip it.
All right, sounds good.
And John, I believe you went and saw a re-release in theaters this week.
Yes, I did. I saw the final Wednesday night re-release of the Christopher Nolan plethora I was a little disappointed that they did not actually re-release The Prestige. I was hoping to get a chance to see that one back in the theaters, but this one is a movie that not many people did enjoy, but I remember seeing it for the first time in theaters, absolutely loving it. I have the Blu-ray, I have the soundtrack on vinyl by Hans Zimmer. This is Dunkirk, the World War II film about the British soldiers that were stuck on the beach of Dunkirk during World War II, which we mention in the next couple of minutes. And I gotta tell you, I love the way this movie is broken down. I love the way that he uses time. I love the way that Christopher Nolan tells this story and connects every character that you meet at a different point in time during this movie. A lot of people didn't like it, but I really did. I was very, very thrilled to see this back in theaters. Before 1917 came out, this was one of those war movies that I saw in theaters that I could not take a deep breath during, and when it finally ended, I was able to take a deep breath. Check this one out, because as we all know, Christopher Nolan likes to use time in a different way, and I think he really delivered it in this one.
Awesome. Well, I am a huge Christopher Nolan fan like yourself, so...
Yeah, and Tom Hardy's in it, Kenneth Branagh, James Darcy, and even Harry Styles, who is known for being a pop star, but I gotta tell you, the first time I saw Dunkirk, I was blown away by Harry Styles. Like, he really killed the role that he was in. That's
funny, because the main character in the book and therefore movie that I saw this week was based on Harry Styles in terms of inspiration.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
his pop star status.
Wow.
Yeah.
Couple other actors actually in Dunkirk. Cillian Murphy, of course, Mark Rylance and Barry Keoghan. Just a fantastic cast of actors, and yeah, the Dunkirk is a feast for the eyes.
Well, now that we've taken the time to discuss the 2024 movies we've seen, how about we rewind 20 years and discuss a 2004 movie?
Hey, that sounds like a good idea. My film comes to us from a director that I have discussed before, especially the lead actress in this movie. Director is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and the lead actress is Audrey Tautou. If you remember from several episodes back, I did the movie Amélie from 2001, which Vee very unfortunately did not like, so that's why I'm even more curious about what Vee's opinion of this film is going to be. This movie is based on a novel written by Sébastien Japrisot. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. The screenplay and adaptation was written by Guillaume Laurent and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Like I mentioned before, Audrey Tautou is the star of this film. This film also stars Gaspard Ulliel, Dominique Pignon, Chantal Nourith, André Desilliers, Tiki Holgato, Marion Cotillard, and an actress that we will discuss in just a little bit, because that's kind of a little bit of an Easter egg, and I was very excited that V seemed to be excited about finding out that this actress was in this movie.
Yes, very excited.
So without further ado, the movie that we are going to discuss that I chose this week from 2004 is A Very Long Engagement. A Very Long Engagement is set just after World War I. This movie is set in 1920. However, we do trace back to 1917 in no man's land, in the Somme, the trenches called Bingo Crépuscule. Or as they say in the movie, why not yippee doodle doo? Because there's a lot of comedy in this movie on top of the intensity of the war and the heartwarming, kind of heartbreaking investigation that Mathilde goes on. Mathilde is played by Audrey Tautou. Manek is played by Gaspard Ulliel. Mathilde and Manek have been engaged in 1917. Manek has then been drafted for World War I to go out to no man's land to fight in the trenches of Bingo Crépuscule. When they were children, Manek actually approached Mathilde because he was very curious about why she was walking so funny because of what she had on her leg. She had braces on her leg because she unfortunately came down with polio at a very young age. This was, of course, in the early 1900s. This is also set in France. So actually, this is my third French film that I've done on Movies You Miss podcast.
Oui, oui.
Oui, oui, indeed. I started out with the magnificent A Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Oh my God, that movie's so good.
So fantastic. Fast forwarded several episodes after that to Amélie, and now the third one, A Very Long Engagement.
Oh, which I hated Amélie from episode 66, so now this is going to be the tiebreaker one way or another.
Ah, well, we shall see. So Mathilde and Manek end up growing up together in this little village outside of Paris, France, and start to fall in love with each other. Manek is very protective of Mathilde at a very young age. He's also wanting to show her the world, basically, and show her exploration. And we find out Manek's father is actually the lighthouse keeper just on the coast of where they're living. And very sweetly, because she cannot actually do a whole lot of walking on her own, he puts her on his back and carries her up the spiral staircase in the center of the lighthouse. He He also puts her on his back to climb up the ladder on the exterior of the lighthouse. And this is actually very cool because this was done practically, of them going up the exterior of the lighthouse. They just put these two kids in harnesses and spent a day shooting them going up the exterior of the lighthouse.
That's very cool.
Very, very cool. There's an hour and 15-minute documentary on this movie on disc 2 of the DVD. I actually have 2 versions of A Very Long Engagement on DVD. I have the version that I bought at Amoeba Music, and I have a version that I bought when I was in Munich, actually. And the Munich one was only Region 2, so unfortunately I never did get to watch the one that I bought in Germany, but I still have it as a memento because this is one of my favorite films of all time. I've loved this movie since I saw it. My father and I actually saw this movie at the ArcLight on opening weekend when it came out in 2004. So it holds a bit of a special place in my heart, not only because it's such a sweet and heartbreaking and intense movie, but it was great to get to experience this movie in the theaters. And V, I'm sure you can understand, especially with the World War I battles, the stunning cinematography and the soundtrack that just tugs at your heartstrings.
Yes, this must have been a great theatrical experience.
It really was. So moving forward a little bit in life, Mathilde and Manek, like I mentioned, they get engaged. Manek goes to the trenches to fight for France against Germany in World War I. We end up finding out that Manek has gone missing. Mathilde is very, of course, heartbroken about all this. Come to find out that he has also been buried. So he is unfortunately now not just missing, he has been killed during World War I. Mathilde is not fully convinced that Manek is actually dead. So she goes on a little bit of an investigation to find Manek and find the people that he was involved with during the battles outside of Bingo Crepuscule. Mathilde also comes across wives of other men that she learns the names of throughout her investigation, along with her private investigator who keeps bringing her information about other soldiers that were involved in the Somme and Bingo Crepuscule with Manek. She comes across one wife of Bastoche, who ends up being the husband of V. Who was it?
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster in a French film, speaking fluent French.
Oh my God, she's so amazing. I love her so much.
She really is. It was one of those moments where my dad and I looked at each other in the theater like, Jodie fucking Foster in a French film, speaking fluent French, and just like you and I mentioned during when we both watched Naiad, she looks exactly the same, and this movie is 20 years old.
She does look exactly the same. It's crazy how good she looks, and especially from Naiad, right, when she is basically in a sports bra part of that movie, and she just got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yes, so congratulations to Jodie Foster for that.
Yes, big fans.
Yes, absolutely. And I really liked her story. We won't necessarily get too deep into it, but like I said, she was married to Bastoche, who was a man that had come in contact with Manek at one point during this whole debacle at the Somme and in No Man's Land. And on top of that, we meet Tina Lombardi, played by Marion Cotillard, who was just badass in this movie.
So good.
So awesome. 20 years ago, she was gorgeous, and in Inception and Dark Knight Rises, again, like Jodie Foster, she has not aged. She still looks fantastic.
Yes, she just has the worst death in cinematic history is all.
Yes, she does, in Dark Knight Rises.
And by worst, I mean stupidest.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. The reason why we meet Tina and Elodie and all of these other wives is because they were married to men along with Manek that were accused of self-mutilation that were going to a firing squad. And instead of the firing squad, they decide to just send them over the trenches into No Man's Land. And for the rest of the movie, we are along with Mathilde throughout this entire investigation that she's a part of, that her private investigator, Germain Pierre, is really sinking his teeth into and really uncovering a lot of really holy fucking shit moments in this movie about what not only happened to Manek, but Bastoche and all of these other men that were involved in this self-mutilation court-martial during World War I. And like I mentioned before, it's funny, it's heartbreaking, the cinematography is stunning, the soundtrack is, like I said, pulls at your heartstrings. And at this point, V, I gotta know what you thought of A Very Long Engagement.
I was shocked at how complex this movie was. I went in thinking it was just some love story happening at the backdrop of World War I, and instead it's almost like this true crime investigation that we're following, and it's so engrossing, and there's such a wonderful cast of characters, and I really love, as an American, or as an English speaker I should say, how they handled all of the flashbacks or people telling their stories. It wasn't just a camera on someone's face. When they're telling the story, it dissolves into the actual scene of that. And that was so helpful in order to keep everybody straight. But I absolutely love this movie. I have to own this movie. Everybody needs to watch this movie. I can't believe it took you 109 episodes to introduce me to this movie. I'm actually a little bit peeved about that because it's a freaking masterpiece. This movie is unbelievable, and I was absolutely all in within the first 15 minutes of this film.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It opens up very intensely, and the cast is so convincing.
Every one of them.
Every time I watch this movie, I do this. I hold a pillow because my heart hurts watching this movie. The World War I battles and sequences in this movie are so spectacular that when I get into a lot of the behind the scenes of this movie, it's really just like, it's mind boggling, because this is one of those movies kind of similar to Tenet and Inception and Interstellar, Nolan movies more so than anything, and a lot of Spielberg and Danny Boyle movies, is I want to be in that world and I don't want to know how it was done. I just want to live in the fact that this actually happened and I was along for the ride. It feels so real when I watch this movie, and I don't watch this movie. Yeah, I don't watch this movie all the time. This is like a once in every 2-year watch for me.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it's a long one. It's like 2 hours, 20 minutes. But every time I watch it, there's new things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another reason why I love this movie, is because, like you said, the characters are complex. The introductions to other characters talking about, you know, being in the Somme or being involved with Manek or being court-martialed or this, that, and the other. It's just so fascinating. And like I said, the cinematography is amazing. You really are sucked into the fact that this is happening in 1920. Costumes are stunning. Everything is just fucking fantastic.
All I wanted to do watching this movie was eat French food and live on a French countryside.
Yes.
This movie's gorgeous and horrific. I did not expect it to be an action movie either. The war scenes are so fantastically done.
Oh, hell yeah.
In a traumatizing way, obviously, and goddamn, what a waste. Like, the whole movie, I was just so sad. Every time they showed World War I, because it was just such a waste. And it was just so heartbreaking. And of course, medical technology was not there at the time.
No, not at all.
Just so brutal and so disgusting, but I love that they didn't sugarcoat any of that, and it's very important to remind everyone of how horrific this war was.
Oh yeah. It kind of made me think, watching it this time, is like, it would be interesting to do a side-by-side of this and All Quiet on the Western Front, or this and 1917, and just like see the other sides of it while watching this movie. Not that that's talking down on the other ones, of course. All Quiet on the Western Front is masterful, and 1917 as well is a fantastic World War I movie. Instant classic when it first came out. I could remember leaving the theaters being like, holy mother of God. But it's interesting, too, to think about that this one is the least graphic of the war sequences. Although, there's that one moment where Manek is, like, in that one foxhole and a body explodes on him.
Oh, God.
And the way the camera just lifts up over him as he's, like, spitting out the guy's gut. Oh, my God. Watching it this time around, I hugged myself so tight, because Gaspard Ulliel just kills that 17 seconds so well. Just like horrific screaming. You definitely have to see this movie. It is an absolute must watch. And I have turned a lot of people onto this movie over the last 20 years. And Amy watched this movie with me this time around. She actually put her video game down while watching this movie with me. And when it ended, she goes, wow, that was something else. I'm like, yeah, it is. And then this movie's based on a novel. Had I known that, I would have read the book.
Oh, God, yeah.
Maybe a few years ago. And it's funny, too. Like I said, every time I watch, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's based on a novel. Like, I forget that it's based on a novel. It feels so original, too. And I think I'm going to have to read the novel just to see the comparison. Because, again, this has been one of my favorite movies since 2004. And, you know, I'm not so sorry that it took 109 episodes to get to it. You know me, I like to savor things. I like to drop things on you out of nowhere. And I think that this is this movie pairs spectacularly with your pick this week.
It really does, and I can't believe it's also based on a book similar to my movie, because we hadn't seen each other's movies, and just based on the summary of the plot, we thought that it could be a good pairing, and I cannot believe watching your film, because I watched mine first and then yours second, the same order that you do, actually.
Right.
Watching your film, I could not believe what a perfect pairing this was.
Yeah, it really worked out. I can't wait to get into your movie. But there's a lot to get into with mine, so it sounds like you enjoyed it, which warms my heart, and you got a couple things else you want to talk about.
I do, if that's okay, just because I love this movie.
No, I love talking about this movie.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, why is everybody self-mutilating with the hand? Why the hand?
I think that
because it's so obvious.
It is. It's very obvious, yeah. But at the same time, if you mutilate your hands, then your hand is useless. So they were going for their dominant hands.
A weapon.
Yeah, so you can't fire a gun. Which
Got it. That
completely makes sense. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like the one shot with the two guys that are in the trench in the rain, they each have the guns on each other's hands. It's just, and the way that Manek does it is not, he doesn't shoot himself. Like that was, it's kind of a brave way to do it in a really fucked up way. I would consider these guys in a way kind of draft dodgers. However, they still went. They still battled out. But there was that whole thing of, if you're hurt or you're wounded to a point where you're useless, they'll send you home. So all of these men, including Manek, wanted to get home to their wives and their children. Manek didn't have any children yet, but he had just gotten engaged to Mathilde, and he wanted to be back with her. And one of the most heartbreaking lines is when Manek says to Bastoche and the other men in the trench, "I can't wait to go home after the execution." You're seeing the naivete and the complete, childlike nature of this kid that was 17 years old that was sent to World War I. Like, he'd never heard the word execution before. So he thinks he's going to go home when everything's done and well.
And the whole time in this movie, and you mentioned draft dodging as well, which was a term used in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I never judged those people. I never judged those men at all because they didn't sign up for it. Neither did most of the men in Vietnam. And so if you did what you had to do to not be cannon fodder because your dad wasn't connected or you weren't rich or whatever, and so you were actually being shipped over there, dude, I'd do the same thing.
I kind of feel like I would too. I mean, I remember back in the day, I was pretty hopped up on getting into the military. My father's a Navy man.
Right.
Both of my grandparents are. And not because of that. I just, I wanted to serve my country. I was kind of one of those guys. A lot of my buddies were too. While I understand people not adhering to the draft hasn't happened since Vietnam. So nobody is actually going over to any of these other spots in the world because they're drafted into it. They are enlisting on their own accord, which is totally fine.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely 100%. I am a supporter of the military. I will say that.
Same.
I'm not. It's just, again, like you said, it's fucked up. War is never pretty. And, that's one of the reasons why when we did our war movies, I did Black Hawk Down because it was so real and so gritty.
And such a
just
waste.
Completely wasteful. And, you think back even to World War I and World War II, like, so many dead. So it's again, we can talk about it for hours, but it's so fucking brutal.
It is, but the juxtaposition between that brutality and it's not that gruesome of a movie. I will let our listeners know. I know we've described a couple of pretty disgusting scenes, but
yes.
It's not that grotesque of a movie, not that brutal. It's not in the ranks of like Saving Private Ryan or a Quentin Tarantino movie at all. There are a few scenes of violence that are very integral to the story, but it's juxtaposed with this gorgeous French story in the countryside with its citizenry.
Yeah.
And those two worlds combining is such a beautiful mix. It's absolutely breathtaking. This story is so well put together, especially because, similar to my movie, they're at a specific time in present day, which is 1920, and they keep reflecting back to 1917.
Yes.
And it just blends so well together. I loved the aunt and uncle in this movie, too, and how supportive they were. They're so sweet.
Yeah, did you recognize Dominique Pignon?
I did.
Yes, he was in Amélie, which is such a completely different character for him to play from Amélie.
And Alien Resurrection.
Oh, that's right. Well, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, so there we go.
Exactly. But this is a good time to say, I do not like Audrey Tautou.
Oh.
At all, as an actress. Don't like her.
Oh, man.
I think she's too old to act that precocious. And her little tiny mouth and trying to act all demure, it just annoys me. I'm sorry.
Interesting.
I really don't like her. But despite that, I loved this movie. This movie is so good, it overwhelmed my distaste for that specific actress. I'm sorry, no offense, but that's just my opinion. However, I loved and was absolutely blown away, but not surprised by the presence and talent of Gaspard Ulliel.
Oh, yeah.
He was so good in a movie I saw years ago called Hannibal Rising.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he was Hannibal Lecter.
He was Hannibal Lecter as a young man, and he was so good. And that movie's not bad. That one's more intense and grosser than this movie, of course.
I would imagine so.
But I remember being so blown away by him and his talent and just his screen presence. And it was the same in this movie, and it's so sad that in 2022 he passed away from a skiing accident. And I am so pleased to have a chance to watch another one of his films.
I am completely floored by this news. I had no fucking idea
I'm sorry.
that he was killed in 2022. That is, oh my God.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
He was 38.
Oh my God. Oh man. Wow. Well, now I got to watch Hannibal Rising.
Yes, definitely.
Oh my gosh. Well, rest in peace, man. Wherever you are, you did a great job in A Very Long Engagement.
He definitely left an impact.
Wow. Oh, that's... Damn. Talk about devastation.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Oh, it's fine. You know, people die. It happens. But it was a skiing accident. That sucks even more.
Yeah. But it makes this movie more poignant and more powerful. And thank you so much for introducing me to it. And I'm glad that I enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk a little bit about Gaspard Ulliel. Jean-Pierre Jeunet put him through quite the rigorous audition process. He auditioned him several times. Every audition lasted 3 hours long.
What?
He dressed him in the 1917 World War I garb, had him running around and, doing a lot of the lines, and especially in some of the scenes where he and Mathilde, right before he goes to the trenches, he and... Jean-Pierre Jeunet were just spending a lot of time together getting to know the character and stuff like that. So after, I read that it was 3 auditions that were upwards of 3 hours long, Jean-Pierre Jeunet offered him the role, and he took the role, and that worked out very well for everybody, because like you, V, majority of the people that have seen this movie think that he is next to Audrey Tautou, regardless of what you think. He is definitely a shining star in this movie.
Absolutely.
Marion Cotillard, who we've mentioned before, she plays Tina Lombardi. She won the Caesar Award for her role in this movie.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very awesome. And also really, really awesome because she only has 8 minutes of screen time in this movie.
Yeah, but like you said,
they are affecting.
Chews up the scenes she's in.
Oh yeah.
My gosh.
Fantastic actress. And just recently seeing Inception in theaters again, I have not seen La Vie en Rose yet, but I gotta see it. Like, she won the Oscar for that movie, and she has always been just so captivating and just a knockout.
Mm-hmm.
This is on the 1001 movies to see before you die list, which I completely agree with.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Very interestingly enough, this movie was produced by Warner Independent Pictures. I'm sure you saw that as the credits were opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So this film, the production itself, did not receive any state financial aid from France.
Okay.
Because Warner Independent Pictures is a United States company.
Right.
It was also disqualified from showing at any Paris Film Festival, including Cannes.
What?
Because of the U.S. backing. It was disqualified as a French production because Warner Independent Pictures fronted most of the money.
Tonight we riot.
Yes, indeed, we do. We go over the Somme and we go into no man's land against the Cannes Film Festival judges.
That makes me upset.
Yeah, it's quite when I read that, my eyes bugged out. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
But, it's still a very well-respected film, which is also great. Jean-Pierre Jeunet spent 10 years trying to get this movie into an adaptation process and into production. He had a lot of trouble with it because he could not find the right actress to play Mathilde. Now, V, you're wrong, because Audrey Tautou, I personally think, is fantastic. I know you did not like Amélie, which is still just insane to me, but that's okay. That's what we're here for.
Every opinion is valid, John.
Yes, it is. So while Jean-Pierre Jeunet was shooting Amélie, he ended up figuring out throughout the process of that production that Audrey Tautou would be a perfect Mathilde, cast her, and things started moving forward for A Very Long Engagement, since this was the film that he did after Amélie.
And does that mean the book was written in the 90s if he was working on it for 10 years? Or was it written before that?
Yes, you're right. The book actually ended up coming out in September of 1994. So 10 years, basically, oddly enough.
Perfect.
The film was released, yeah. So I guess technically it took him about 9 years to finally get production going, because production began in August of 2003.
Okay.
And it ended up wrapping in February of 2004. So that's a pretty lengthy shooting schedule.
Which makes sense given the complexity of some of the scenes they shot.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of this was done practically. The background for all of the World War I stuff in No Man's Land and the trenches was 200 background.
Wow, they made good use of only 200 extras.
Oh, hell yeah, they did. And they were all pretty much involved in the stunts as well, including Gaspard Ulliel. 95% of the explosions on set and in No Man's Land and the trenches were 100% practical. Guys ended up actually being buried in the sand after certain explosions went out, and stunt coordinators would run in and dig them out.
Oh my God.
And in the documentary, there's one that buries 5 stuntmen. Stunt coordinators run in, start digging them out, and it's like 4 minutes where they finally get the last guy out, and of course you see his thumb come up out of the dirt, and everybody just gives him a round of applause. Like we said, the stunt thing needs to be a freaking Oscar category, and not because of just this movie, but so many other stunts that are done practically and done so convincingly and so well that it's like these guys do risk their lives for certain scenes of a movie that maybe not a lot of people are going to see. The Somme, the Bingo Crépuscule, was actually built in miniature and a full animated diagram on top of storyboards that took several weeks to really plan every shot. All of the rain is practical, not always rented rain. It's Europe, so a lot of the rain is actually real.
Oh my God.
And yeah, watching the documentary, there were several moments where First AD is screaming, is camera ready? Camera ready? He's like, well, it just started raining. Give us a few fucking minutes, and we'll likely be ready. They're just wrapping it up in trash bags and Glad bags and all that kind of stuff to make sure that it's not going to get destroyed, which, of course, I've been there several times on set where it just starts raining and you're kind of stuck and you got to shoot anyway because when are you going to be back in this location again? Mm-hmm. And you never know.
Yes, I've done fake rain and real rain.
Yes, the fake rain can be fun, but sometimes not so much.
When I worked for a special effects company, we did a lot of weather effects, and it was a lot of fun, especially because you're out and you're filming this, say, car commercial, so it's raining, and you're just standing over there in a t-shirt while it's raining on screen. It's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Another very cool thing about watching this documentary was a lot of the sound that we have in this movie was recorded live. So during the raids on No Man's Land, all of the screaming, all the, the shouting, all of the running, they had background run in front of and around and had the boom operator running around with them while they were wearing all of these costumes. So a lot of the ADR is actually not really ADR. It was done practically on set day of, which is really fucking cool. Now, going into Jodie Foster, just a little bit. Jodie Foster has a pretty intense role in this movie. We're not going to get too deep into it. It's kind of a spoiler, but I remember watching it, in the theater and being like, oh, whoa. And she played Elodie just fantastically. The scene where we meet her in the fruit market was all done practically. And at one point or another, her agents and managers were on Jean-Pierre Jeunet's ass because of the certain scenes that Jodie Foster was going to be shooting in this movie.
Yes.
So
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, he was very compliant. He sent explanations. He sent reasons for, as a director, like, well, the reason for this is this, and da-da-da. Sent the book to her agents and managers. And on the day that they shot a certain scene, Jodie Foster, as a joke for the entire crew, stripped naked in front of everybody and said, I'm not nervous, you fuckers are.
God damn it, I love her so much.
I know, isn't that awesome?
I'm so glad she was in this film. And again, like you said, that her storyline is pretty intense. This film is so much more than I thought it was at first. Again, I was so blown away at how complex this story is and how intense this is, because I really just thought it was this love story during World War I, and it's so much cooler than that.
Yeah, it is. It's great. So many characters, so many stories that you're introduced to, so many wow moments, so many just like, oh, it's a masterful movie, and I'm very glad that you enjoyed it.
And you get invested in every single character in this movie. That's the thing I loved about it. Every subplot was so fascinating, and you cared about them, and they pulled at your heartstrings as well, not just the two leads. And that made this movie so much grander, and it's the reason why it's such a spectacular film.
I love to hear it. I completely agree with you. Most of this movie was shot in practical locations, not a lot on stage work, which is also spectacular and awesome.
Every one of their locations.
Oh, hell yeah. I want to go to the lighthouse.
Yes, I know.
The lighthouse was just, so gorgeous.
I was watching this movie after Pete's Dragon. I was like, am I into lighthouses now?
Yes, absolutely. The lighthouse is actually in a part of France called Finisterre. So maybe one of these days we'll make it out that way after we do the way walk or something.
Camino de Santiago?
There we go. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was called.
Sounds like a plan to me. We'll be in France at that point.
Yeah. And speaking of France, there's a shot that shows the Paris Opera House. I'm sure you remember it.
Yes.
Gorgeous shot. That was a plate that they took of the Opera House. And what they did to get the cars, horse-drawn carriages, and all the background in that shot was they ended up shooting all of the background, horse-drawn carriages, and cars in a open parking lot and just layering it in.
Oh, nice.
So fucking badass.
Brilliant.
And Jean-Pierre Jeunet gave every background actor a backstory as to where they were going on the day of shooting.
Oh.
Very, very cool. So in the documentary, he walks up to a couple of, you guys are going to go look at a new apartment. Goes over to another couple. You guys are on your way to go get some wine and a baguette. You guys are over here. You're trying to get a horse-drawn carriage, but nobody's stopping for you. Hey, you're the horse-drawn carriage. Don't stop for them. Like all this shit. Really, really cool. And the fascinating thing about the documentary on this movie is, very similarly to the Amélie documentary, is there's no moments where there's interviews with anybody involved in the production. It is basically just somebody walking around with a video camera just taping days of production.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so it's not, I mean, they tell you what they're shooting, like some day 3 of 17, right? But they don't cut to Jean-Pierre Jeunet being like, so basically what we did here is, they just show him directing, and I love that kind of a documentary because the actuality of it all is like, it's fucking happening. Like, I just think it's so awesome. This movie came out November 26th of 2004 in Los Angeles and New York. It was a limited release. It was a worldwide release January of 2005.
Oh.
The budget was 56 million francs.
Whoa. I mean, I get it because of a lot of the action sequences, but also that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a bit. But again, a lot of practical effects, all the costumes, the locations, The domestic box office for A Very Long Engagement is very heartbreaking. It was 6.5 million.
Oh.
Yeah. The worldwide box office, though, came in at 69.4 million. Not great. Didn't do very well. But it's one of those movies that once it did come out on DVD, a lot of people did see it and a lot of people very much enjoyed it. So it's lived on DVD and Blu-ray and streaming. So I got to just hats off to everybody involved because, again, it's a completely masterful movie.
It really is. And funny enough, the only other time that you've discussed 2004 before was in episode 17 when you did Millions, which is another European movie.
That's true, yes. The highest grossing film domestically was Shrek 2 for the year 2004. Spider-Man 2 came in at number 2. Number 3, a pick of mine, Passion of the Christ. No, I'm kidding, I didn't pick that one.
I was like, what did I miss?
V, a pick of yours was number 18, Dodgeball, which we did very recently.
Yes.
The 34th highest grossing film of that year, also another pick of yours, our Denzel episode, Man on Fire.
So good.
Hell yeah. And for the worldwide box office, coming in at number 80, A Very Long Engagement, my pick for this week.
Everybody watch this film. It's so good.
Yes, I really encourage everybody to check it out. And if you do want to check this movie out, it is available on streaming on just about every platform for $3.99. I recommend Apple or Amazon. Now I think it's time to fast forward to World War II and discuss your pick, V. What do you say?
Sounds good. Let's keep this war train going, and also a first watch reaction.
Yes.
I picked a movie from 2007, a movie I saw in theaters with my sister Amber and my father, because she had heard wonderful things about it, and we walked out of the movie in silence and didn't talk the entire ride home.
Oh, wow.
Because this movie is that impactful. It's from 2007. It stars Keira Knightley and James McAvoy. This is Atonement.
Yeah.
This movie opens up on a grand palatial estate in England in the late 1930s to a very wealthy family, the Tallases. Bryony Tallis is the younger sister, and she's a very precocious, very self-absorbed, very imaginative, very annoying 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And she's played by Saoirse Ronan. And her older sister, Cecilia, is in her 20s. She just got out of university. And she definitely plays the part of a wealthy young lady, rather aloof. And she's played by Keira Knightley.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on this estate is not only their parents, but also, of course, a bunch of servants, including a groundskeeper, who's the son of one of the women who works in the kitchen. This boy is named Robbie. He's also in his early 20s, and he's played by James McAvoy. He's been sent to university actually by the father of this rich family because he's lived there his whole life. It seems like their father is actually a pretty cool guy, given that he paid for his, kitchen maid's son's education and has actually told him that he will pay for his medical school as well.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a little bit of tension between Cecilia and Robbie that you see right away, but you're not sure really where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And a lot of the first act of this movie is actually directed by Bryony, the younger daughter, because it starts with her wanting to do a play and really perform, and it's because she's a very passionate writer. With that comes this big imagination that I mentioned. And so the beginning of this movie is told through her eyes and her experiences and her naivete as a 12-year-old. And she's seeing all these interactions between her sister and Robbie and really not understanding a lot of them. And so she watches them at the tail end of this interaction by their fountain in the morning. This day is all leading towards an actual dinner at the home with not only Cecilia and her parents, but also her brother and his brother's friend who is coming to visit. So first we get led through this interaction at the fountain between Robbie and Cecilia, as I said, and then Bryony actually intercepts a letter between the two. And this perspective is really jarring for the audience because we're seeing it through the lens of a 12-year-old who really doesn't understand what's going on. So then things rewind a little bit, and the day plays out again, but instead from the perspective of Cecilia and Robbie. And now everything falls into place and makes sense. And this tension that Bryony's seeing on the tail end of it is really them trying to voice these unspoken feelings that they have for each other. And this letter that Bryony intercepts, which is very risque, and she thinks very offensive, is actually just Robbie making a horrendous error.
Yeah.
By sending Cecilia a note he'd written in jest.
Yes.
But that mistake actually leads to Robbie and Cecilia finally, after years, voicing their feelings for each other. And it turns out they're both in love. And they're able to do that because Robbie comes in before dinner to apologize to Cecilia about the mistake of this letter.
Yes.
Well, as you like to say, one thing leads to another. And Cecilia and Robbie end up making love in the library. And unfortunately, Bryony, being the curious and precocious child that she is, walks in on them.
Mm-hmm.
But during this dinner, when Cecilia's brother and his friend Paul Marshall, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, are there, Cecilia and Bryony's cousins are also visiting, and they're little kids. Her cousin Lola is about the same age as Bryony, so probably 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so.
And Lola's younger brothers, who are twins. They go missing after dinner, and everybody searches the grounds for them. And at this point, Bryony sees something that she really doesn't comprehend. Mm-hmm. And it turns out it's actually Lola, her little cousin, being assaulted.
Yes.
But because of all the day's events, because of what she doesn't understand, she makes a false witness statement and points the finger at Robbie for this assault.
Yeah.
Because of everything she sees that she doesn't understand that day, she believes she saw Robbie.
Yes.
Because at this point, she thinks he's a sex maniac, as she says, right? And thinks that he had assaulted her sister as well. And she's just really not understanding what's going on, and unfortunately opens her big mouth and names Robbie. And so the cops come and arrest him and take him away. Fast forward to 1940. England is deep into the war with Germany, and Robbie has been given the choice: stay in prison or join the military, fight in the war, and they'll expunge his criminal record.
Yeah.
Robbie has been wrongfully accused. Robbie has no other options. He does. And we also find out at this point that Cecilia is now in London working as a nurse because she has completely cut off all contact with her family because she believes Robbie is innocent. And her family just wants to move on. And, it's 1940. People want to pretend it didn't happen, right? And just say, okay, justice was served. We don't need to talk about this anymore.
Right.
And now because Bryony is 16 years old, she's starting to reflect on that day and put together things that she didn't understand at the time that she's starting to now. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the movie is Bryony coming to terms and realizing her monumental mistake, while Robbie and Cecilia continue to write letters to each other and try to be together as they were always meant to be, that unfortunately got stolen away from them because of Bryony, because of this war.
Yeah.
And they're all trying to survive it. And John, as everyone knows, this was your first viewing. What did you think?
Yeah. Oh, hated it.
No, you didn't.
No, I'm kidding. Not at all. I was fully engrossed in this movie. I'd been wanting to see it for a long time, and I'm glad that these films actually paired together so well because mine was World War I, yours was World War II. That was great. I've been told by my parents that I need to watch this movie.
Oh my God.
They're fans of this movie, and I remember just being like, Atonement, nah. And again, it fell on my dislike for Sorrison Rossi. I know that's not how you say her name, but when we did our painted type of movies, when I did Waking Life and Loving Vincent, I was like, and I've liked Hannah. I've been a fan of a few of the movies that Saoirse Ronan's in, especially Lovely Bones. And it's funny to think back, the reason why I didn't like her was because of the trailer of this movie.
She is an unlikable character in the movie.
Very much so. But the thing also that was very refreshing to me was that the reason why he's taken away is not what I thought it was.
Oh, good.
Based on the way the trailer made it look like, was that she was going to tell the police that Robbie had assaulted her.
Oh, okay.
And for whatever reason, when I saw the trailer, I was like, well, that's not true. I knew immediately. I was like, there's something about this, the way this trailer is going is telling me that whatever she's going to tell the cops is not true.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember being like, well, I don't know if I can watch this movie because it's probably going to piss me off.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of those movies where it's a downer and this, that, and the other. But the way that it's told, like you mentioned, the whole thing that she observes through the window, I remember seeing it. I was like, okay, I know we're likely to get the reason why what's going on is going on. But then at the same time, I'm kind of thinking it would be kind of cool if we didn't. And we only had her perspective of the whole thing. But when you get their perspective of what really happened, of course, you're kind of like, oh, okay, totally fine, innocent, if you will. But when she reads the letter, incorrect letter, she's like, this guy's a sex maniac. The police need to know about this. And then, of course, she walks in on him, and then she sees the assault while they're looking for her cousins. And you're kind of like, my gosh, this is absolutely the twisted mindset of a child.
Yes, exactly.
And I loved that about it. I loved the Tarantino-esque telling of certain moments in the movie, especially when she walks in on them. We go back to the whole thing where Robbie's like, that wasn't the letter you were supposed to read. And she goes, oh, it was very anatomical. And he's like, I know. Because, of course, the only word that we are given is the C word.
Right.
In text, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, when he gives her the letter and she runs away with it, he starts screaming for her. And then, of course, the camera pans up to the proper letter that's still sitting on his desk. Yeah. And then my favorite line, was there an envelope? Oh! You're just like, you fucking dumb child.
Exactly.
You have just made a federal offense reading somebody's mail.
I'm not a fan of corporal punishment, but you need to be spanked.
You need to be totally disciplined for this.
Oh,
but
God.
Yeah, I mean, she was fantastic though. Saoirse Ronan, fantastic.
She received an Oscar nomination for it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah.
McAvoy, I don't think I've ever been disappointed in a role with James McAvoy.
He's so good.
He is so fucking good. I mean, we talked about him in my pick many episodes ago for Trance, where he was the lead in that, and he was just epic in that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for his new movie, Speak No Evil, that's coming out in the next couple of months.
He looks so
He
creepy.
looks just madness. I mean, Split is great. He's great as Professor Xavier. He's just great all around.
He is.
And Keira Knightley, she was just, I mean, I couldn't take my eyes off of her.
Captivating.
I've always been a Keira Knightley fan. Of course, she fell on my radar during the Pirates saga. But I know a lot of people knew her before that in Bend It Like Beckham, which is also a very good movie, and she's very good in it as well. And after watching Atonement, I actually went back and watched the Pirates movies because I was like, you know what? I'm reading a book on pirates right now. I want to watch the Pirates movies, and Atonement made me want to spend some more time with Keira Knightley. So overall, cast was spectacular, especially when we get into the older Bryony. I thought the teenage Bryony was awesome. The casting was just
spot
excellent. Yeah, I mean, it was just fantastic. Absolutely sumptuous cinematography. I mean, just like goddamn gorgeous movie, similar to A Very Long Engagement. And the soundtrack was wonderful too. Like, I mean, all technical aspects of both of our movies this episode are just unbelievable.
Award-worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, A Very Long Engagement was nominated for 2 Oscars as well, but I didn't get into that when we were talking about it. But we're talking about Atonement right now. But yeah, going again to World War II, the set design, the production design, the costumes, the hairstyles, I mean, just all of it is like, wow, this is happening. Like this is... Yeah, completely captivating in every single way. And I texted you, I think I was literally like 45 minutes in, and I was like, if this is ever on 4K, I'm getting this movie. I gotta own this movie. I love movies like this that just keep you guessing, especially when you're along for the ride of the realization of the child. Yeah, this movie, absolutely 10 out of 10. I wish I had seen it in theaters again. I didn't see it until just last week, and I rented it, so I don't have the rental anymore, but I'm not even kidding. This will be in my collection. This will be like a once, similar to A Very Long Engagement. I'll just do like a double feature again in the future. I'll do A Very Long Engagement first and then Atonement, because I did Atonement and then my movie, but I got to do it chronologically from here on out.
Of course.
So... yeah, just a wonderful movie. I know it's based on a book. I have not read the Book of Atonement.
I have.
But...
it's not as good.
Oh, interesting.
It's
all right.
very
the movie's better.
wordy.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
This is your second then. Stardust you like better than the book.
It's very few and far between of the hundreds and hundreds of books that I've read in my life, and all of the ones that have been adapted to movies. You can count it on one hand, the movies that I prefer to the book.
All right. Well, there you go.
I do not say that lightly, I promise.
No, but I'm very glad you introduced me to it. I cried during this movie. I've cried during A Very Long Engagement every time I've watched that one too. But I mean, this one, again, first view, I just was like, oh man, a fantastic film. If any of our listeners have not seen this, this is definitely a movie that needs to be seen.
Thank you. I'm so glad you feel that way. And let's talk about the chemistry between Keira Knightley and James McAvoy for a second.
Oh my God, I was sweating.
So believable. They are
yeah, it was hot.
Perfect. Yes, it was. It's also a very hot movie too. There's a lot of war stuff, but also it's a good love story. And and the casting was fantastic. Her green dress.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Costumes, hairstyle. I mean, she was made for this movie. This was like, when she was born, they were like, you know what? Atonement will be good for when she's 23 or something like that. Like, she's going to be in that movie. She's going to be Cecilia.
I wish she'd won the Oscar for this movie. Or James.
Was she nominated?
She wasn't, and neither was James McAvoy, which is bullshit.
Yeah, that's a bit ridiculous. But I mean, Saoirse Ronan was. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is. And it was her breakout role. She was 12 when they were filming. She was 13 when she was nominated.
Wow.
And this movie, like yours, also does a fantastic job chronicling the horrors of war. Oh, yeah. They don't shy away from it, which I think is really important.
Yes.
And what about that Dunkirk scene?
Oh my God. The one-shotter? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
When they go, I put my hand on Amy's knee and I said, babe, I think this is Dunkirk. And then they said, 300,000 men on the beach. I was like, this is fucking Dunkirk. Like, I was just like, holy shit. Yeah, no, that was majestic. Like, I'm curious. I'm sure,
know.
The inspiration for Nolan was, of course, the true story. But
of course.
I imagine he has seen this movie and been like, ooh, that was a great use of Dunkirk.
So, and I'm just so conflicted that I find such a horrific scene so beautiful in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know, technically, how they shot it. About 2/3 of the way through this movie, Robbie, along with a bunch of other 300,000 other English soldiers, are evacuating France, and he finally makes it to Dunkirk and goes over this sand dune, and it's just this expansive shot, and your breath is taken away because of how horrific everything is.
Oh, yeah.
But the way they set it up was so unbelievable, and it follows Robbie as a new person on the beach, walking through and just getting a lay of the land, pun intended, of what the hell is going on. And it's a 5-minute continuous shot.
So awesome. When they go into the gazebo, the men are singing and playing music, and then they come out of that. And it was one of those moments similar to like Birdman. When I first saw Birdman, I was like, there hasn't been a cut yet. Like, wow.
Exactly. It took 3 weeks to prepare the beach and seafront area for this shot.
Whoa.
All the street furniture was removed. Tons of sand was brought in to cover up the promenade, the road, the pavement. They boarded up all of the buildings, and they brought in all of the army vehicles and all of the extras. And after over a week of rehearsals, they started shooting.
Wow. That's awesome.
And they had 2 days available to shoot this continuous 5-minute scene.
What?
That's it.
Wow.
Because there was 1,000 extras.
Whoa.
But
damn.
The first day it rained. The lighting sucked and they couldn't do it.
Of course.
Yeah. The scene required 5 takes.
Damn.
And the 3rd take was used in the movie.
Wow.
All done on a Steadicam. And the Steadicam operator, Peter Robinson, shot the scene by riding on a tracking vehicle, then walking off to the bandstand and rounding that whole entire boat.
Jeez.
Moving down a ramp, stepping onto a rickshaw, and finally dismounting the rickshaw and continuing his walk while he follows Robbie through the whole scene.
Good God. That's incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
That is so amazing.
So good. And filming the whole movie, all 3 parts of it, was actually done in sequence.
Oh.
I love when films are shot in sequence. I don't know why, but I love it.
That is so awesome.
But post-production took 9 months.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No way.
Mm-hmm. And before he gets to Dunkirk, Robbie actually walks through this field, and he takes his helmet off.
Yes.
And he looks up, and for some reason the clouds part, and it becomes sunny for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts his head down, and he puts his helmet back on, and it becomes cloudy again. The director, Joe Wright, revealed that was real.
No way.
It just happened to clear out for Robbie for a second.
Wow.
And that is true weather.
That is pretty badass.
Yeah.
The cinematic gods were at work.
Oh, because this movie is so good. That's why. And as you mentioned, Keira Knightley, of course, plays Elizabeth Swann in all the Pirates movie. I actually was introduced to her through Bend It Like Beckham.
Oh, there you go.
It was only much later on that I realized that she actually had a small part in Star Wars: A Phantom Menace.
Oh my gosh, that's right. She's the decoy Padme.
She's the decoy Padme, exactly.
Queen Amidala herself.
Exactly. And she's in a movie we both hate, Love Actually. Especially her storyline. It's so toxic and gross.
Honestly, I don't even remember it. I hate it that much.
Good. I'm glad. That storyline makes me angry. But she is in a movie we both love, King Arthur.
Oh, yeah.
She's in Pride and Prejudice. Oh, such a good movie.
I hear that's a good one, too. I haven't seen that rendition of it.
Oh, fantastic. It's one of my all-time favorite.
Is it better than Pride and
movies.
Prejudice and Zombies?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, okay.
She's also in a movie with Mark Ruffalo called Begin Again, which is very good.
I've heard that one's good. That's
It's
the
good.
musical, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that one's pretty good.
It
I
is.
meant to see that one a long time ago. I never did see that one, though.
She's also in a Chris Pine movie called Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit, which is a prequel to all the Jack Ryan movies, and it's really good.
Oh, all right.
Kenneth Branagh plays a villainous Russian in it. Totally worth watching.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Similar to Tenet, then.
Exactly.
All right.
She's also in Everest, which is a pretty good movie.
I don't even remember her in Everest.
She plays the wife out in Australia who gets the phone calls.
Okay.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Because she makes much more of an impact for both of us in The Boston Strangler, which came out last year.
Oh, yes.
Which we both recommend.
Yes, great movie.
The other movies James McAvoy's in that you hadn't mentioned yet, first of all, Atomic Blonde, my second pick ever of this podcast.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Percival.
God. He's so good in that film, too.
So awesome. Straight from the tit of Mother Mary herself. I love that line.
He's so awesome in everything he does. Even a terrible action movie called Wanted doesn't matter. He's fantastic in it. I love
Never
that.
saw it.
That film's so fun because it's so ridiculous and just
I gotta see
off
that.
the wall. Yeah, you do.
That was Tamir Beckman-Bedov's first American director.
Oh, God, yeah, you
Because
need
he
to
did
watch
the
it.
Night Watch and Day Watch movies that are on this list at some point.
I'm so glad because he's a fun director.
Oh, yeah. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. He's also the director of that, and that's on the list coming up.
Great.
Vampire Hunter, excuse me.
James McAvoy is also a dirty cop in the movie Filth, which you need to see if you haven't seen it yet.
I actually turned that one off.
Oh, because it's so bad. He's so
fucked.
because he's so screwed up, right?
Oh, yeah. You know who wrote the novel?
The guy who wrote
Irvin Welsh.
Trainspotting?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Figures. Yeah, that's a fucked up movie. But he's also in Split.
Yes, that's so good.
Oh, God.
Anya Taylor-Joy, too.
Speaking of deserving an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And Saoirse Ronan, as you said, is in The Lovely Bones, Hannah, Grand Budapest Hotel, Brooklyn, and she's more prominent in Lady Bird. She actually stars in it, as well as the remake of Little Women.
That's right, yes.
A couple other people I want to mention. Juno Temple actually plays Lola, the cousin.
Yes.
She is Keely Jones in the show Ted Lasso, which John refuses to watch.
You're right about that.
Alfie Allen also has a bit part in this movie. He's Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones. He actually plays kind of a junior butler guy in this film.
Junior butler guy, that works.
Yeah, exactly. And clearly I'm not rich and don't have a butler.
You just be the junior butler guy.
Yeah, it's a technical
Carry our
term.
bags.
And Brenda Blevin plays Robbie's mom.
Oh.
The funny thing is she plays Keira Knightley's mom in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She also plays the mom in A River Runs Through It, a Robert Redford directed film starring Brad Pitt. It's very good. It's probably going to be on the list at some point.
Alrighty.
She also plays a mom in The Witches, the Angelica Houston version.
Oh.
She's great at playing a mom.
Oh, that's right. She does. Yeah.
She plays Bruno's mom, the kid that gets turned into a mouse.
Yeah. Such a crazy-ass movie.
That is a movie that needs to be on my October list.
Hell yeah.
Ah, God, so good.
Could do Witches and the Witch.
There we go.
With Anya Taylor-Joy. There we go. We got our start to October this year.
All
Settled.
Right. God, that month is so much easier to fill up than Christmas, though.
Yeah, it is.
As you said, we both agree that this movie is gorgeous. The director of photography is Seamus McGarvey. He did The Greatest Showman.
Ah, ha, ha.
The Accountant with Ben Affleck.
Oh, yeah. I never saw that one.
It's good. Nocturnal Animals. 50 Shades of Grey and Bad... 50 Shades of Grey and Bad Times at the El Royale Theater.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious because we were just talking about Dakota Johnson.
We were, yeah. That's hilarious.
It is hilarious. He did the first Avengers movie. He did a movie that is a guilty pleasure of ours. He's a director of photography on Sahara.
Oh, very cool.
And he also did the John Cusack classic High Fidelity.
Oh, I like High Fidelity.
This is his most gorgeous film.
It's gorgeous.
Christopher Hampton adapted this book to the screen. He also wrote The Father with Anthony Hopkins.
Ah.
The Son with Hugh Jackman, which is supposed to be not as good. He also wrote The Quiet American, that early 2000s movie starring Michael Caine.
Oh, yeah.
And Dangerous Liaisons.
All right.
And Joe Wright directed this film. His most recent movie is Cyrano, starring Peter Dinklage.
Oh, cool.
He also directed Darkest Hour.
Oh, that's a good one. Gary Oldman and Lily James.
Mm-hmm. Gary Oldman is Winston Churchill.
Great, great, great movie.
He also directed Hannah with Saoirse Ronan.
Hell yeah, and Eric Bana and Cate Blanchett.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Hannah is killer. My wife introduced me to Hannah.
I think my dad's a fan of it. I need to watch it.
It's really badass. You should check it out.
Joe Wright also directed Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah. Atonement had a budget of $30 million.
Oh, wow. Locations, maybe? Costumes?
1,000 extras, the entire
1,000
Dunkirk
extras.
scene,
Yeah.
all of the war, all of the extras in the medical wards. There's a lot in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. 30 million makes sense.
Yeah. This movie's pretty expansive, that's for sure.
Definitely.
In the U.S., it made $51 million.
Ah.
And worldwide, it made $129 million.
Oh, all right.
So it did great.
Yeah, it did.
And there are only 8 UK military ambulances from World War II that remain in the world.
Really?
This movie used them all.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Lots of practicality in this movie. I love it.
Badass.
And especially in the beginning of this movie, when they're at the estate, there's this beautiful visual softness to it.
Oh, yeah.
It's because a Christian Dior stocking was stretched over the camera lens to achieve a soft focus. Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, that's why a lot of the memories and flashbacks are a little bit softer.
Oh, cool. I like that.
And the director, Joe Wright,
Yeah.
he had actually wanted Keira Knightley to play the role of Bryony in her late teens.
Really?
Yes, but Keira actually immediately said no. She liked the character of Cecilia, and she wanted to get away from playing girls on the brink of womanhood and play a more mature character.
Ah, well, good for her.
Which is great. Oh my gosh, she was so perfect for the role of Cecilia.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree.
And James McAvoy says this is the best script he's ever read.
Wow. That's awesome.
Which I agree. I mean, the dialogue in this film between the two of them, it's so good.
Yeah.
So
it's
good.
Damn good. So captivating.
And I'm so glad you liked the score. Dario Marianelli actually was the composer from Pride and Prejudice.
All right.
The green dress that Keira Knightley wore
Yes.
has been named the best of all time by In Style magazine.
Wow.
It is the best dress in a movie of all time.
Damn. That's wild.
It beat out Audrey Hepburn's little black dress in Breakfast at Tiffany's,
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe's white dress in The 7-Year Itch, even
Damn.
Vivien Leigh's red dress from Gone with the Wind. I don't disagree.
No, it was pretty awesome.
It's spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also because she wears it so well, of course.
Yeah, that's very true.
God, she's beautiful. Everybody's beautiful in this film. The film is beautiful. The backdrop is... everything's gorgeous.
Everything. Everything.
And it not only did really well in the box office, but it was also nominated for 7 Academy Awards.
7?
Unfortunately, it only won 1, but the nominees were Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress for Saoirse Ronan, Best Adapted Screenplay for Christopher Hampton,
Oh, wow.
Best Cinematography for Seamus McGarvey,
Nice.
Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, of course,
Absolutely.
and Dario Marianelli won for Best Original Score. He also was the composer for Pride and Prejudice, and he actually reunited the English Chamber Orchestra from Pride and Prejudice to make all the music for this movie. So there's a lot of similarities there, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
That's so awesome.
And John, you mentioned A Very Long Engagement was nominated for Oscars as well?
Yes, it was nominated for 2, for cinematography for Bruno Delbonnel, and best art direction for Aline Bonetto. Unfortunately, did not win either nominee.
Why was it nominated for Best Foreign Feature?
I don't know.
That's
kind of a
ridiculous.
slap. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is.
That has aged poorly.
Very much so.
And that is Atonement. If you haven't seen it or would like to revisit it, you can stream it on Prime.
That's what I did.
I'm so glad you loved this film.
Oh, yeah. It was great. I will definitely I'll own this one at some point in the future.
I'm so glad to hear that. I love this film. I've loved it since I watched it in theaters, even though it is very affecting. Highly recommend it, as well as your film. I'm so glad we paired these up this week. It was just such serendipity. I can't believe how much these films are similar, given we hadn't seen each other's picks.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It worked out too well.
Perfectly, absolutely perfectly. And I'm just so glad we both liked them too.
Yes, so am I. I know. God. I was worried about you with mine.
I know, especially because I don't like Audrey Tautou.
Yeah. It worked out very well for both.
It really did. Well, thank you so much for giving my film a chance, and also for picking your film that inspired this episode.
Hey, all right.
And John, would you watch A Very Long Engagement with your grandma?
I would, but it would unfortunately have to be a dubbed version. My grandmother wasn't big on watching foreign films, so probably not, because I can't disrespect a movie like this and watch the dubbed version.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy dubbed versions.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I hear you. I respect that.
Yeah. V, would you watch Atonement with your grandmother?
My mom's mom, it was a period piece. She probably would have really liked it. I watched it with my father in the theaters, so there's that.
Yeah, there you go.
It's an intense film, but there's more graphic violence than graphic sex in this movie, so...
Yes, very true.
I would certainly say 17 or above for both films, though, because the war depictions are so harrowing and just so sad. I definitely don't think teenagers should watch it.
Yeah, I would say 15 and above for both of these movies, personally.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just me, though. I don't have kids, you know.
Just such a bad influence.
I am.
Well, I think that wraps up our Love in the Time of War episode. Do you want to tell our fine audience what to expect next week?
Oh, do I ever. Well, it's been 109 episodes, and that means we will be celebrating our 2-year anniversary of Movies You Miss podcast. So, similarly to last year, after our first year, we're going to be doing some favorite films of ours. V, what's your pick for next week?
One of my all-time favorite movies, a film that I was fortunate enough to see in theaters recently for its 25th anniversary. I picked the Brendan Fraser classic, The Mummy.
Nice.
And if you want to follow along, you can stream it on Peacock.
Well, there you go. I'll watch my Blu-ray copy.
Perfect. I would expect you to own this film, honestly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Completely ownable.
And John, what's one of your favorites that you picked?
I'm going with a movie that took 110 episodes to get to, but it's worth the wait, especially because this movie is intense, sad, hilarious, and completely electrifying. I'm talking about a film that came out in 1996. Ewan McGregor, Johnny Lee Miller, Robert Carlyle, Ewan Bremner, and Kelly MacDonald in Danny Boyle's adaptation of Irvin Welsh's novel, Trainspotting.
If people remember, a couple episodes ago, we talked about me being at John's house for the weekend and watching a movie that made me silent and stop talking to him for about a half an hour, and the movie that I never ever want to watch again, ever, in my entire life. That's this film.
So you're not going to watch it again?
Not at all. No, absolutely not. I took notes while we watched it the first time.
Oh, perfect then.
Never watching this film again. I respect that you love it. I respect why you love it. It's too traumatic.
Yeah, it's an intense one. And if you'd like to follow along and watch Trainspotting, if you have not yet seen this masterpiece, it's available on Apple, Amazon, Fandango, all the streamers for $3.59. I will be watching my DVD copy, and I will also be reading my Making of Trainspotting book and all the good stuff, because I love this movie and can't wait to introduce our audience to it, especially for those that have not seen it yet.
I'm really excited to get into it because I know you love it so much.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about your experience when we watched it together. Cocktails were had immediately after.
Yes. That's true. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Also, tell all your friends and family and coworkers about our podcast as well.
Please do.
We really love getting new listeners, and you can follow us at Movies You Miss Pod on all the social media platforms. And as many of you know, we love to end our podcast with film is a form of art, and in art, every opinion is valid, except if you think
you can get through both of these movies without crying.
Oh, I couldn't.
I couldn't either.
That's a good one.
Let us know if you've been able to get through both of these movies without crying.
I love when movies make me cry. It means it was successful at telling its story.
Oh, as do I. I'm a big crier in movies, and my wife always makes fun of me for it.
That's why I like watching movies with you, because I have other people in my life who also make fun of me when I cry. So I like that we can watch movies together and both cry together and just like lean against each other and be like, it's okay.
Yeah. Uncontrollable sobbing.
You're definitely a good movie partner, that's for sure.
Likewise.
Thanks, buddy. Well, that's why we have this podcast, and that's why we'll be back next week. So until then, bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.